All right, good afternoon. Thank you guys for attending this Good Ideas webinar series. Today we're focused on how we are creating new school models and the reason why that they're important. My name is Meron Tekle and I am the Director of New School Creation here at Good Reason Houston. For those of you who aren't familiar with the organization, Good Reason Houston exists to accelerate the public school improvement across the city of Houston. We are locally based and we are just really entrenched in the work of Houston across different departments, different organizations. We believe that every child in every neighborhood deserves access to a world-class education. We know that learning in a high quality environment can really change the trajectory of a child's life, and every student deserves to have that opportunity within the public schools in Houston that prepare them to reach their full potential. And that includes a lot of different things, but today what we're focused on is the creation of new and innovative school models and how that helps with, just giving more opportunities and choices within Houston. At Good Reason Houston, we actually offer a new school launch fellowship, and it supports leaders who are aspiring to develop innovative school models that are responsive to the needs and demands of families within a community. So this part of the work that Good Reason Houston does, it's just a branch of the work that we do, but it's really focused on creating new schools. It is a 15-month full-time paid fellowship that supports diverse entrepreneurial instructional leaders through the authorization process to launch a new public school. If you're someone who's interested in that, please chat me and I can get you more information on that. And we'll talk a little bit about the fellowship at the end. But without further ado, joining us today is one of our new school fellows. His name is Marvin Pierre. Marvin is the executive director of 8 Million Stories. Prior to 8 Million Stories, he was selected as a Bridge Fellow with the New Teacher Project, as well as a Camelback Ventures Fellow. And through those fellowships, he focused on developing and growing 8 Million Stories, which is an alternative, education program that's already changed the lives of lots of Houston students through skills training and employment opportunities. He's now taken what he's learned from 8 Million Stories and has decided to transition to opening a school that will serve students in the same way that 8 Million Stories does, but a lot more comprehensive as a full school. He's taking this experience and using it to open the Justice Hub School. This will be a unique high school environment that will keep students in school and build bridges to life after high school. So welcome. There's so much more I could say about Marvin, but I'll stop there. He's been wonderful to work with. So welcome. We're so happy to have you join us, Marvin.
Welcome. Thank you, Meron. Pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to share about the Justice Hub School and all the work we've been doing this past year to hopefully open up a innovative school that I firmly believe will change the lives of many of our children and really create more equitable access to in our communities.
We believe it as well. As a beginning, could you just tell us a little bit about your journey to launching the Justice Hub? How did you decide to launch the Justice Hub? Why do your own school? And just tell us a little bit about the Justice Hub.
Yeah, so I'll first start. I am not a native Houstonian, so I'm a native New Yorker, but I'm now a proud native of Houstonian. Been in Houston now for the past 7 years and really love being here and contributing to our community, especially in the space of education. And I'm also the proud son of 2 Haitian immigrant parents that came to this country to create a better life opportunity for myself and my 4 brothers. And growing up in the community of Jamaica, Queens was extremely challenging. And if it wasn't for many of my mentors and I guess extended family, I wouldn't be speaking with you here today. And so I started my career on Wall Street. And so I didn't start off wanting to be an educator. I wanted to be an investment banker. And so that career was very much short-lived, although I did end up graduating from Trinity College and starting my career in investment banking at Goldman Sachs in New York City. I worked there for 2.5 years. In 2008, everyone was losing their job due to the housing crisis and essentially what became our recession. And out of that, I lost my job as well and was really in this kind of like position where I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And my best friend, Shantae Agard from boarding school, was a teacher in Brooklyn at the time. And she knew that I was out of work and I was just kind of looking for something to do. And so she called me up and said, "Hey, Marvin, we've I know you're not doing anything right now, but I could really use your help in speaking to the young boys in my class. They don't take school seriously, and you come from where they come from, and you look like them. We don't have many male figures in our schools, and be positive role models for our young boys. And so I decided to come and talk to the young boys, and it went really well. Was able to talk to them and share them with them my upbringing, how I overcame obstacles to reach success. And as I was kind of like hanging out in the classroom, I stumbled on a chart that she had up on her desk in her classroom, and it had the boys on one side and the girls on another. And next to the names of the students was a number. And I asked her, I said, Shante, what does this number represent? And she said, that's their reading levels. And it was a fifth grade class, and the highest number I saw was a 3. And for me, I knew what that meant for those young boys who were not reading at or above their grade level, that they would either have a higher likelihood of being involved in the criminal justice system, but most importantly, many of them would not graduate from high school. And so it was at that moment that I also had a, kind of flashback about a conversation that I had with my surrogate father and mentor, Dr. Sam McFadden, who, really changed my life and put me on a trajectory for success. And one of the things that he told me was that, Marvin, I know you're going to be successful in life, but I want you to always remember, as you climb up the ladder of success, always reach back to pull up another person. Never knew where that would play in my life. I grew up poor. And so my goal since I was in school was to make a lot of money and be able to provide for myself and my family. And never did I know that my work would be in education. And it was at that moment I knew what he was talking about in terms of lifting up another person. And it was really to work on helping to ensure that our young boys would actually be able to graduate from high school, and go on to reach levels of success like I did. And so I jumped into the space of education, landed on I sent an email out to my network, and it landed on the desk of a charter school principal. And he was, moved by my passion and my me wanting to essentially work with young boys, especially, and created a position for me. I didn't have a certification or anything. And so literally just jumped into education with this focus on just helping and trying to make an impact in our local community. And out of that experience, I uncovered that I had a gift with young people, specifically young people who had a hard time succeeding in school, which ultimately was our young boys of color. And in that experience, I realized that this was probably my calling in life. And, I decided to start to think about ultimately starting my own school, specifically for Black boys. It would be an elementary school that would go from K through 8. And in that development, I realized that I wanted to, transition into the middle school space. So I started in elementary school with all boys, and wanted to ensure that I was actually going to be successful. I needed to know that I could work with middle school boys and have the same level of impact. And so I made my way to Houston, where I ended up serving as an assistant principal at Kip Polaris Academy for Boys. Went there, I was there for 3 years. Did really well and really enjoyed the work that I was doing in terms of molding young boys to become, strong men. And there was a stage where I was looking to hopefully see if the network was interested in scaling back and starting younger with our boys. And ultimately that wasn't, something that they were in the position to do. And so decided to try to look at a different issue here locally, which is the school to prison pipeline, where I learned that every year in our city, we refer almost 12,000 kids a year to our juvenile justice system. And most of those referrals come from our schools. And those referrals often are from nonviolent offenses. And what makes things worse is that when those young people serve their time, whether it's from 3 to 12 months inside of a detention facility, they have a really difficult time going back into their community schools. And it was at that point, the vision for 8 Million Stories was birthed, to really give young people an alternative option to completing their education, providing them with the necessary job readiness skills that they need to earn a livable wage. And then most importantly, addressing the social emotional challenges that many of our young people have, and unfortunately are not able to get the support that they need, whether it's in our schools or in our communities. And so we've been pretty much doing this work for the last 4 years, and have had tremendous impact, and we've changed a lot of lives. And one of the things that I've constantly thought about was thinking about how we can really ensure that from a long-term perspective, we can have an opportunity to position our young people to break generational poverty. And so that became more clear to me this past summer when one of our graduates, Brianna, who is currently now a freshman at Southern and is doing extremely well, we helped her go through 8 million stories. She came through the CPS system. And ultimately, while we felt that getting her to college was, a big win for us, she was also met with some setbacks because, there are certain financial things that she was in need of support with, especially when it came to an out-of-state waiver. And the only way that she can get that waiver removed from her account was if she had a high school transcript. And unfortunately, we were only providing our students with a GED. And so here I am, thinking that we're creating equitable opportunities and access for our young people, especially our most vulnerable youth. But in reality, they're still being met with some challenges. And it was at that moment I realized that we needed to start our intervention with our young people sooner, to really create equitable access for them, to ensure that no other child goes through what Brianna had to experience, despite us being able to help resolve that issue for her.
Thank you, Marvin. I think it's really powerful to see the trajectory from 8 million stories and how you are just broadening your impact through this school, and how you've gone from a small program to I'd say a larger scale program that's getting a lot of attention in Houston, and then realizing with the case of Brianna, like there's even more that we can do. Um, I've heard you speak a lot about, and you mentioned earlier on, community and having a village and how important community is. So as I think about the work that you've done, I know that you're very big on listening to the community and responding to their needs versus telling them what they need. You really are here to be with the community and not speak to the community. So can you tell us why it's important for communities to have school options for the kids, and what does options mean for students and family? Like, why does Houston need more great public school options instead of turnaround? Why are you creating something new?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. And one of the things I think is important is really understanding that every student is not meant to fit in this type of traditional school setting that we have been accustomed to seeing play over for decades, right? We believe that here's the school setting and every student should be able to thrive in this setting, and unfortunately that's not the case. We have students who have different types of needs and have different levels of support that they need, in order for them to be successful. And in the work we've done with 8 million stories, we've seen that, by being a small program where students can get the personalized support and individualized attention that they need to address some of the challenges that they come to us with, that is, what has been able to put them in a position to be successful. And when I think about our schools, we're not really being intentional about ensuring that all of our students have a space to thrive. It's either, you can conform to how we have the school set up, or there's no space for you. And that's when we talk about equitable and access to quality schools, that is not a reality for many of our families currently. And I think this is important for us to really start to think differently about the different types of schools that we need in our community to meet the needs of our students, because every kid needs something different in order for them to be successful. And the more we can create schools that can meet those needs, the more we can really talk about how we're creating an equitable opportunity for students to be successful in life here in Houston.
Yes, appreciate that. I think differentiation has become a huge buzzword in education, and we talk about how you differentiate in classrooms, but I wholeheartedly agree. We forget about differentiating schools and needing different models for different types of kids. So I love that you're thinking that way. For the people who are listening, or just as you interact with people, a common misconception is this definition of public school and understanding that charter schools are also public schools. So under this umbrella of public school, what are the key differences between a traditional public school and a public charter school?
Well, I think traditional public schools are all managed by the State Board of Education. And what's unique about charter schools is that it's managed by independent board. So you have small mom and pops charters who are just independent, and then you have larger charter schools who are the KIPS and the Yes Preps and the Idea Public Schools, and those are the larger charter management organizations. And each of those organizations, for charters, when I think about what's so unique about them, is that they have the flexibility and the freedom to design the school in the way they see fit. However, with that comes with a lot of accountability as well. And I don't think that is the same situation for a lot of our traditional public schools, right? This is the format, this is the model, and they have to operate within those spaces. And our essentially overseen by the State Board of Education, and charters have just more flexibility. The other thing that I think is a big difference is the funding, how funding is allocated to charters versus ISDs. So ISDs get both local and state funding, and however, charters only get state funding. And so one of the key misconceptions is that, you're going to get equal funding access, and that's not the case. And so if you want to start a charter school and you don't like fundraising, you might want to think differently in terms of starting a charter school, because that is something that you're going to have to make your full-time job if it isn't already.
Appreciate that. Thank you for giving us some clarity, just like a broad overview of the differences. You just said if you aren't fundraising, then you probably shouldn't open a charter. So what are some other things that should be considered in terms of like, what does the process look like for someone who wants to open a charter school in Texas? And what does it look like for you?
Well, I think it's almost just like starting a business, right? And I think sometimes we look at schools and forget the fact that schools are a business, right? You have to meet performance outcomes in order for you to stay in business. And so when you're starting a school and you're thinking about it, you have to assess, is there a need for the model that I'm proposing, right? And so that goes directly aligned with engaging with the community, understanding what the needs are, and seeing if your model is actually what the community wants. Because the last thing you want to do is put all this time and energy into building a school, and it's not really what the community needs. And so the other thing is, you got to go through a lot of the formal processes for getting a charter, to be eligible to apply for a charter. So I know off top, you've got to attend the mandatory informational meeting by TA, and TA, off the record, plays no games. So if you don't attend those meetings, forget about your dream of opening a school. And so just really being intentional about that. And I think the other key important work thing that you need to consider is really just doing the on the ground work. And so engaging with the community members, stakeholders, elected officials, and ensuring that folks are understanding your vision and you're getting buy-in and support behind that. And I think that's critically important, especially as you're going to receive, and you anticipate that you're going to have some challenges right along the way. There's nothing about starting a school that's going to be smooth and easy. And I think the more you have allies and support for your vision and your model and the thing that you want, the impact that you want to have in the community, the better you're going to be able to tap into the resources that are available to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's as much as, like you said, we don't like to think of education as a business because our babies are who we love. There's this, someone told me when we were starting this, that you have to think of it as your head and your heart. And if you don't have both, then it's going to be very difficult to open a charter school. You have to have that love and passion within your heart, but you also have to have that head piece and the brain and thinking about operationalizing and budgeting and things like that. So people have to have both parts fully invested if they want to open a charter school, because it's definitely some work. And I've been happy to be on that journey with you and just watch the amount of work that you've been putting in. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. What are the challenges that you've had to overcome, and how did the fellowship program with Good Reason Houston help you?
Well, one, trying to start a charter school in the middle of a pandemic is not something I would suggest to anyone. And so just to be able to come out of that, successful was a win. But I think just in terms of challenges, I think with anything that you're starting, right, you're going to have people that are going to be for you, and then there's going to folks that are going to really make you question whether you're doing the right work or you're approaching the work the right way. And so I think as an entrepreneur, one of the challenges that I had to, take on early on was just making sure that I, received the feedback, but I didn't let the feedback, whether in some cases where, it was negative or, there was a lot of pushes against what I wanted to do, that it didn't deter me from pursuing this goal of starting a school. And I think the hardest thing is that there's so many things that you have to accomplish and get done in order for your charter to be even considered, right? And that's a lot, taking on, the challenge of starting the Justice Hub, but then also running the day-to-day operations of 8 Million Stories, right? I was running two projects in the middle of a pandemic where, that's not normal. And so I think that is the hardest thing, I've had to experience in a long time. But, if I can make it through this situation, and, I'm ready to conquer and take on whatever is to come after that.
How would you say that the fellowship program helped, or do you feel like entering through a fellowship versus independently going at it as an educational entrepreneur? Like, what are the pros and cons you see?
Yeah, I mean, if I didn't have good reason helping me through this process, I don't know if I would have been able to get through it. Just the amount of resources that came with the fellowship put me in a position to really focus on building the model and getting a lot support with the operational stuff. That also comes into play when you're applying for a charter. And so my wheelhouse is I'm a visionary. And so putting my ideas on paper and really dreaming a big dream is what I do best. And having good reason be that blank canvas for me where I can just say, here's what I want to do, and getting that structure and support from the organization to really make that come to life, not only just in the way I'm articulating it or speaking about it, but also on paper, because I think that's important too. You can be very compelling in front of people, but you also you have to make sure that your vision is compelling in the application, where folks are not going to be able to interface with you as often as you would like. And so I think having that resource was a game changer for me. And I think about if I didn't have that, the Justice Hub probably wouldn't be a conversation we're having right now.
Oh, thank you. We did not pay him to say that, but we have really enjoyed working with you, and we hope to work with more fellows who have the type of vision that you have, Marvin. One last question, and then we'll start to wrap up. Let's say that I'm an educational entrepreneur and I'm ready to take the next step towards launching my own school. I have this vision, I have this mission. What's the best way to approach this goal? Like, what do I do now?
Like I said earlier, do your research, get a real strong sense of what you want to accomplish and if there's a need for it here locally. And I also would say, start talking to people. One of the things that I'm unapologetic about is I share my vision all the time. Like social media platforms, if you're talking to me, I will tell you everything that I'm going to do, because I really believe that what I'm doing right now is my purpose, right? If it's for me, it's for me. And the same thing for entrepreneurs. If you were the one that came up with the idea and the vision developed within you, no one can take that away, right? The only person that can get in the way of that is yourself. And so I think for me, telling the world, telling the community about what you want to do is important, because people get behind people, right? Mm. Justice Hub is not a physical space yet, right? And so the excitement we're creating around the Justice Hub is generated by me, right? And so if I'm not excited about the school, the change and the impact in the lives we're going to empower and transform, how do you expect people to do the same? And so I think about, that I think is critically important to really assess, is this what you really want to do? And if you want to do it, be prepared for the negative pushes, feedback, the positive feedback, all of that, and just stand firmly with both your feet on the ground and your head held high and consume all of that, because some people are pro charter and some are not. And it's nothing personal, right? We know that people come to this work with different experiences and different perceptions about what they think schools are. And you just got to stay, I think, stand firm, in your belief in what you want to accomplish. And I know that we're not just starting a school because I want to compete against seats. The Justice Hub is really designed to service students that both our traditional schools and our charters have not been able to serve, right? And quite frankly, no one is raising their hands to serve. So we started 8 Million Stories because we bet on kids and bet on the possibility that if we provide the resources and the support, these kids can make it. I always get tripped up talking about the kids. And so, excuse me. So this is no different, right? We bet on ourselves. And, in 2017, we took a shot at starting a school for a population of kids that everyone said needs to be written off, right? They can't be helped. They can't be empowered. Essentially, they can't be saved. And we're still here 4 years later, still doing the work in a bigger way. And so just imagine if we're starting now our intervention at 14 years of age instead of 16, which is what we're doing right now at 8 Million Stories. The lives that we're going to change is going to be, it's going to transform so many communities, so many kids' lives, and bring a new sense of hope to our communities that really need it right now.
Thank you. This is all the time we have for today. I know we can all see it, but if you guys just see and feel the passion, if you've ever spoken with Mr. Pierre before, it has been an honor working with him. The work that 8 Million Stories has done and continues to do, we encourage you to find out about it. But we also really want you all to look at what he's doing with the Justice Hub and the launching of this school and all the work that's gone behind it. So Marvin, if you want to put anything in the chat where people can get more information, we'll put that in there. I want to thank you for participating. It's a really important discussion and just sharing your knowledge, expertise, and your passion with us today. Thank you for everyone who listened in. If you are someone who has that same passion, if you want to launch a school, you have a vision, a mission, you want to talk more about the fellowship, and Marvin has inspired you. It's a rough road. It is a tough road to opening your own school, but we need people like Marvin who are willing to do it. I'm also going to put in the chat the site if you want to look at the fellowship. We're taking applications now for the next cohort. Marvin is walking the walk. He is walking in his passion and his purpose, and we are looking for more people to do the same. I hope you'll join us on our next Good Reason Houston webinar. It's on April 29th with Dr. Ryan Neal from the Houston Methodist Hospital. We'll be discussing the vaccines, their impact on education, and returning to in-person school fully. You can register on the website at goodreasonhouston.org/events. Thank you guys for listening. Again, in the chat, I've put the fellowship link. Marvin's going to put some link for those of you who want to learn more. And it's always a pleasure hearing about Marvin. It's always a pleasure hearing about the Justice Hub. And I always leave these conversations feeling like I need to do more. So thank you all for joining. Marvin, if you want to wrap us up and then we can close out.
Yeah, appreciate everyone being here, and we'll continue to wait this process out, and hopefully in August of 2022 we'll be talking about the launch and opening of the Justice Hub. But in the meantime, continue to support our young people, especially our most vulnerable kids. Happy to talk to you about the Justice Hub in greater detail. 8 Million Stories. We're right here in 3rd Ward. And looking to continue to do more impact. And we're looking to be an and this is not an or. We are working with the community to fill the gaps in our system and in our communities and the needs of our children. And I'm happy to be a leader in that work. But to be honest with you, we need more support, and we need more allies to join us in this work to really close the gap and create a more equitable space for our children.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. We hope to see you. And if you want to reach out, I will also put my email in the chat. Like Marvin said, we always need more boots on the ground and any support that we can have. Thank you all.